That's it. So I'll start recording. So we're gonna. Okay, so if you guys mute, that would be great. Yeah, then it'll just be me appearing on the video. Okay, thank you. So I'd like you to move back onto your mat and come into child's pose. Actually, we're gonna come into child's pose. So we're resting the forehead down. Okay, and I'm just going to guide us in slowly. So first of all, tuning in with the sensations in the body, feeling the contact through the forehead and the floor or the hands, feeling the contact through the arms and the floor, and feeling the contact through the shins, tops of the feet. So coming into contact with the sensations in the body, also becoming aware of the space around you. So we're all practicing in our home place or practice place. So we're all in different physical spaces, but we're connecting through the medium of the internet, amazingly. So just being aware of the space that you're in, particular space, maybe the temperature of the room, the light, sounds, smell even. And then briefly tuning in with your breath, feeling the breath in the belly area of the body. So in terms of exploring the 5 aspects of mindfulness, I'm just going to move through them in a fairly improvised, what we could say sort of spontaneous way. So I'll draw out certain aspects that occur to me, but feel free to stay in touch with whatever aspect of your experience you wish to. Certainly with the first part of the session, with the yin practice, it's quite natural to tune in with the emotions, with the state of mind, state of being, emotions as well. So feeling the breath. On an inhale, I'd like you to come up into all fours. Okay, and then from here, we're just going to gently do a cat-cow. So as you exhale, I want you to draw the belly in and look back. And on the inhale, gently roll the hips forwards and look up, arching the spine. Exhaling, drawing in, flexing the spine. On the inhale, extending. Feeling the hands rooted down. Tuning in with the breath, a little bit of movement to start with. As we inhale, taking the gaze forwards, possibly up, tipping the pelvis forwards. Exhale, tipping the pelvis back, drawing the belly in a little bit. Okay, just 2 more cycles there. Coming back into a neutral shape. I'd like you to step one of your feet forwards. I'll let you decide which leg. So we come into like a lunge position. So rather than do this as a static hold, we're going to do a dynamic lunge. So the back toes you can turn under or not, it's up to you. So as you exhale, I want you to fall back, as it were, fall back, keeping the toes grounded. And on the inhale, we come forward. So we slide forwards on the inhale and slide back on the exhale. See if you can keep more or less the forward toes down. You can gently look up as you inhale and gently look back and down on the exhale. So it's a sort of variation of the cat-cow, but with the lunge shape. Inhale, coming forwards. So we're gently warming up the hip joint, the thigh, which we're going to move into quite strongly with some of the yin poses. So not forcing the body. One parameter you can play with is actually separating the distance between the feet and the legs, so that it's almost like you're on two tramlines. You might feel that gives you more space in the pelvis. So you take your forward foot slightly out. So it's almost, it can even be out of line with the hip. So just feel your way into the hip area. Next time we inhale, coming into a neutral shape, step back. Just like us to briefly stretch out the backs of the legs, so moving at the hips up towards the ceiling. Coming down into all fours and switch sides. We'll bring the other foot forwards. So being aware of, you can have the legs on two tram lines. You can also play with the distance between the feet. On an inhale, we're gently sliding forwards. On the exhale, moving back. Inhale forwards. Exhale back. As we exhale, gently looking back and down. As we inhale, gently looking forwards and up. So we're including the spine as part of our awareness, even though you'll feel it mainly, I think, in the groins, thighs, pelvis. Tuning in with your own breath as you inhale, coming forwards. Obviously, it might be helpful to have a little bit of padding under the knee. I didn't say that. Exhale back. Inhale forwards. And then coming back again into a neutral shape to the all fours position. Grounding your palms and lifting the pelvis back up again. Come up into like a high dog. So the heels can stay lifted. You can bend the knees and really see if you can lengthen through the upper body. So we're going to come into the first, from here, the first yin pose. This won't be a surprise for a hip sequence. I want us to try to come into swan or sleeping swan. So we cross one of the legs across our mat diagonally. And then you bring yourself down as much as you can towards the floor. So you can allow, in fact, your head to come all the way to the floor. If that doesn't feel okay, you could use, I've made a kind of bolster. I haven't got my bolster here, but like I've got some blankets rolled up. And you can lay onto that, which is also a good way to be in the pose. I've sort of got the bolster underneath my chest. So we're going to spend a few minutes in these poses, actually, between 2 and 3 minutes. The thing to watch out with this particular pose is the front knee. Okay, so care that we're not stressing the knee joint. You want to be feeling this primarily in the hip joint. Okay, so if you can, really letting your weight descend down, letting the head rest, spreading the arms wide. So you can let your body go with gravity. And then touching into this aspect of the specific sensations in the body. So where do you feel this pose? Typically it's felt in the gluteal area, outer hip, and the inner thigh area, the groin area. But you may be noticing other aspects of the pose. Now I'd like you to take an awareness into the whole body. So it's becoming aware of the whole body from the fingertips to the toes, to the crown of the head. So getting a sense of how you are this morning. Tuning in also now with a sense of your mood. So how am I feeling? You could ask that question. What's like the emotional tone of my experience? And then tuning in again with the breath. So this is what we usually refer to as the fifth aspect. So just jumping over the fourth one of reflecting on change. So we'll just focus the first few minutes of the session really down, anchoring down into our direct experience, breath, the body, sensations, emotions. Letting your body really descend with the, as it were, the force of gravity, the weight of gravity, drawing you down. Because I want to interlace three postures together here. So we're going to bring the hands back, as it were, underneath or slightly forward of the shoulder area. We're going to lift ourselves up into what we could call the swan position. So here we come into a back arch. You can take the gaze up. What I usually recommend with this is to lift the pelvis a little bit, so you're not so much heavy in the pelvis. So you lift the pelvis slightly off the floor or away from the floor. Come up onto the fingertips even. So there's still a downward force of gravity. If it doesn't work on the fingertips, resting on the palms. Letting your weight descend through the pelvis. Looking up helps to open the front of the body, the throat area. Descending the shoulder blades. So it's a slightly more active yin pose. This one, it requires a little bit of effort with the arms to prop ourselves up. So we're not completely collapsing down. And then from here, we're going to come into a pose, sometimes I think it's called like the goddess pose. So we have seen this before. So you bring your weight onto your forward buttock. So you allow yourself to sit down at sort of an angle, and then we bend up the back foot and we see if we can hook the back leg. Does that make sense? Great. And then we can actually look back. So you can bring in an element of a twist. So it's a bit lighter than the last pose, than the full swan. It's lighter on the pelvis, but it has a different effect through the pelvic area, through the hip. Starting to work more into the back thigh area. And you're propping yourself up on your forward arm. So you may want to reposition the forward hand. So we're propping ourselves up here, feeling your way into this pose. So we can become aware of the sensations, where they are in the body, but we can also become aware of the texture of the sensation, sense of pleasure or pain or neutral sensations. That would be a way of like refining our awareness of the experience. So, okay, we're aware of sensations, but then we become aware of their nature. Has to be said, well, I like to say this, it's important that there is a certain amount of pleasure in the yoga practice, pleasurable sensations. If it's only unpleasant sensations, it's going to be very difficult to keep up or practice. So it's worth looking out for those when they arise, enjoying them. Also being aware of unpleasant sensations and resistance. So we're scanning through the body, noticing where the pose is working. So with the twist, we're also working into the upper body as much as the pelvis. And we're looking to be in these poses as effortlessly as possible. That's one of the characteristics of the yin practice, is the effort, making minimal amount of effort, especially muscular effort, to be in the pose. Okay, from there, releasing the back leg, carefully unwinding, we'll come back to all fours and then lift back into the high dog position. So the heels high, the knees slightly bent, lifting the sitting bones, lengthening through from the palms through to the outer hips, through to the sitting bones. So lengthening through the middle of the body, breathing there, the head releasing down. And then from there, setting yourself up onto the opposite side. So the other shin comes forwards. Yep. And then we come down into the sleeping swan. Okay, so you can use support or not. It's up to you. I've made this roll out of blankets. Can be quite helpful, a bolster. It's one of these poses where the bolster really comes in, worth having on hand. So it can be done, so I'm suggesting you completely surrender to the pose, but it can also be done with a slightly propping up through the forearms, which I'm doing myself just so I'm a bit freer to talk. But it's also quite, it's a pleasant way to practice. One is slightly propped up. It's up to you, okay? So it would be a variation of the swan, sleeping swan. So again, allowing your attention to start to rest into the body. First of all, tuning in with the sensations specific to the pose. So being aware of that texture, sensation in the hip joint or the inner groin, the inner leg. But also being aware of the rest of the body. So we come into this aspect of whole body awareness or global awareness. So it's from the tips of the toes, soles of the feet, into the fingers, into the crown of the head, through the neck, the spine, the belly. So although each of the poses is going to affect us specifically, we're not disconnecting from the whole body experience. And so we can play between an awareness of specific sensations and a broader awareness of the whole body. So it's an important skill to develop so we don't become over-focused on one area. You're managing to balance focus and what we call broadness, or focus and breadth. And now coming into awareness of the emotions, what we call heart-mind. Awareness of chitta or heart-mind. So this is the emotional tone of our experience. Noticing what's the mood, the overall mood, but maybe within that mood there's different aspects, different elements. Obviously our emotional experience can be quite complex. Well, it is complex. The mind is complex happening. And then I want you to start to bring in awareness of your experience as one of change. So we felt it's really important to introduce this aspect of mindfulness early on. So this is the teaching of impermanence, following the Buddhist tradition. Anitya in Sanskrit, or Anitta in Pali, change. So essentially we're looking to Be aware of our experience directly as one of constant change. So we're going to begin to see the body, the mind, the world around us as one of flux of change. And then just to anchor back for a few moments, come back into the breath. See if you can really surrender. The next 3 exhales, really let go. And then from there, we're going to prop ourselves up again. So coming into the upward swan. So as I said, it may be helpful to lift the pelvis a little bit so we're not so strongly into the extension of the spine when we do that. Lifting the gaze, you can lift up onto the fingertips. We're not going to stay so long in this version. So extending up. We're lengthening through the front of the body, including the throat area, if that feels okay. If it doesn't feel okay, you can just allow the gaze to rest towards the horizon, forwards. It's interesting to explore looking up. In the pose, slightly intensifies the pose. Propping yourself up now. So there's a little bit more efforting required in this version as we're propping up the upper body. And you'll notice how it works more strongly the spine. So the pelvic, lumbar, thoracic, neck spine as well. Okay, and from here, we allow our weight to drop out, as it were, backwards towards the buttock of the folded leg, and then we bring up the back leg and carefully fold this leg towards us. So we're working into the thigh of the back leg, and we can turn to look back. So depending on your flexibility, you may be just holding the foot with your hand, or you may hook it into the elbow. Just see where it comes to. So it puts quite an interesting stretch into the front of the hip area. So this we'll look at later on with a very classic yin pose, saddle pose. We'll come back to this, but this is like a preparation for that, less intense. Breathing here. Again, we're propping ourselves up with the forward hand. Can play with that. You can draw your hand further back. If you want to go for a more of a lateral extension, so this is working the sides of the body as well. In some ways, it's a very rich pose. Yeah, there's lots of different elements. Not just working the pelvis, it's working the spine, it's working the upper body, sides of the body. Looking for a point of balance and ease in the pose. Is it possible to let go more fully? Relaxing the face, the eyes, the jaw. Coming into the whole body awareness. Also aware of the space around you. So not forgetting where we are. Being aware of your body in space, physical space. So the point of these longer held poses is to really allow the pose to soak down towards the bones, the joints and the bones, towards the ligaments, fascia. So it's said that the ligaments and the fascia move much more slowly than, as it were, the muscle body. So for that reason, we're holding the poses longer so that the effect can work itself down into the body, into the connective tissues. That's the sort of logic from a sort of physical point of view. Also, what I find interesting, or what we find interesting with the yin yoga, is it's a more meditative practice quite naturally. Being still, there's time to focus or be aware of your experience in a broader sense, not just the body. Okay, so from there, releasing the back leg, carefully coming round, so coming out slowly, coming into all fours. We're going to come back into the dog pose. This time I'd like to invite you to drop your heels. So you're working more strongly into the backs of the legs. Don't need to do a perfect dog pose here. So what we want to do is lengthen from the palms back towards the legs. I quite like to practice this with the head slightly lifted, so it gives a sense of more space around the neck, the roots of the neck. Lengthening through the sides of the body and looking for that sensation of like a pit in the belly. So the belly naturally lifts here and does the practice of the mula and the uddiyana bandha, sort of natural reflection of those bandhas. The belly draws in and up without really efforting. You may notice that sensation, as it were, in the pit of the belly. And then from there, coming into all fours and bringing the feet forwards. Okay. And I'm going to come into another classical yin position. I'll just change my orientation. So I use this pose a lot. So we're going to bring one leg goes underneath and the other leg goes on top. Okay, so it's shoelace. You can see some people are getting cold and some people are, but we're getting cooler, aren't we? Okay, so, so you can bring the hands onto the top knee, lifting through the upper body. Try and allow the shoulders to drop down. Okay. Allowing your weight to go into the sitting bones. So this is the basic position. Okay, so it can be enhanced or we could say intensified by bringing the weight forward. So you can allow yourself to sink forwards. Possibly even, I've got some blocks here. So I'm not going to rest my head on the floor, but you could rest your head onto some support or the floor, depending on your flexibility. And this will intensify the stretch around the outer hips, around the back of the pelvis. So it's up to you. Yeah, that's it. A bolster is good. The weight is still going down into the sitting bones. Connecting with the breath now. As you exhale, see if you can let go. Soften around the hip joint. So allowing your mindfulness to build up naturally. So we don't need to force the mindfulness practice in yoga. It can be, in some ways, just a natural progression from, or a natural development from, or even a natural arising from the yoga itself. Okay, so we're allowing our body and awareness to come closer together, becoming, as it were, more acutely aware of the body in the poses. Quite naturally, the poses are going to call your attention towards the body. So the question is can we, as it were, surrender to that process? Noticing resistance to being present. Okay, so if we've been really busy, or if we've got a lot of stuff going on in our lives, it's natural to have the mind elsewhere. Just see if you can gently guide your attention towards your body. This is one of perhaps the greatest gifts that can come from the yoga practice, is this coming into the body, becoming more embodied, if you like. Seeing if you can soften around the neck and the arms. Even though you may feel this most intensely in the legs and in the hips. Okay, and from here, we're going to come back up to the vertical. So we'll keep the legs as they are, just very slowly restacking the spine. And then I'd like us to turn towards the inner top leg. So it's, or away from the top of the top leg is another way of describing it. It kind of doesn't really matter which way you turn, but I'm suggesting you turn in the direction of the top leg. So if your right leg is on top, you turn to the right. The left leg is on top, turn to the left. So gently lengthening the spine. Working through the center of the body, a sense of lengthening through the spine, right up towards the crown. As we turn to one side. Again, checking that your weight is even through both sitting bones. So we're not leaning backwards or forwards, or to the left or to the right. Sense of being centered. And then from here, releasing back around to center. And we're just going to take a pause down onto just being aware which leg is on top, because that one is going to be underneath. We're going to lie down for a moment. And I'd like us to interlace the hands around the back of the head. Just do a little bit of work movement. So as we inhale, extend one leg towards the vertical. Exhale, release that leg down. Inhale the opposite leg up to the vertical. Exhale down. And we're going to alternate between the two legs. Inhale, extend, tone the leg, release on the exhale. Inhale, extend, tone the leg, exhale, release. Just working the muscles around the hip joint into the thigh. Releasing the neck, the upper back, elbows releasing down towards the floor. Extend, tone. Okay, now we're going to take this one step further. So as you inhale, you extend up the leg, and as you exhale, keeping the leg straight, lower down towards the floor, and then come back. Inhale up. Exhale down with the leg straight. Position foot onto the floor. Inhale to the vertical. Exhale down. Reposition the foot and alternate. Inhale up. Exhale down. So again, a little bit stronger in terms of toning around the hip and now into the lower abdomen. Around the lower back even. So we'll look at these movements a little bit more over the next couple of days. It's a useful set of movements to tone around the pelvis, the lower back, the lower belly, and into the abdomen. Inhale, we go up. Exhale, legs straight, down. And come back to semi-supine. So all the feet on the floor are going to roll to one side. Come back up to sitting. Hopefully we haven't forgotten which leg was on top. So the leg that was on top is now going to go underneath. Switching round to shoelace pose on the opposite side. Starting off in the vertical. So the idea is to sit between the feet. May help to sit on some support. That gives you a bit more space to be in the pose. Drawing the spine up, lengthening up, and then from there we can allow ourselves to fold forwards. So using supports if that's helpful, or depends on your flexibility. You may well go all the way down towards the floor, but propping up. So I'm generally recommending using props when and it's appropriate to make the pose more accessible without forcing the pose. And I think that's particularly important in these like slow poses, because it's going to be very difficult to be in a pose if you're like fighting with the pose. So try to make the pose a little bit challenging, but at the same time, you can comfortably be there for a few minutes. So backing off to an appropriate level of work. Again, connecting with the breath. So as we exhale, releasing, sense of letting go. Try to release around the shoulders and the neck also. There's another good reason for propping up the head, so you can let the head go. So it's not just hanging into space. Well, it depends, you know, sometimes it can be interesting to just let the head hang into space and then see if you can let go into that space. You can also explore doing it that way. And connecting with your experience of one of change, of flux. So our experience is constantly changing. It's in some ways insubstantial. There's a sense of constant unfolding, constant play, even though we tend to think of our experience as one as fixed and as solid and unchanging. It's actually much more fluid, so we can start to look at that. Noticing how now the sensations are quite different in the hip than they were just a few moments ago. Maybe your emotions have shifted. Seeing where we can let go in the body. Allowing the pose to penetrate down, work down into the connective tissue. So being aware of being on your mat, in your space, practicing. And then from here, we're going to gently restack the spine. So just little by little, coming back up. And then we're going to turn to the opposite direction. Hopefully it's the opposite direction, looking at a different side of the room. So again, lengthening up through the spine, taking care that we're not leaning back or forwards to the left or to the right. So we're lifting through the spine, vertebra by vertebra, just a way of staying in the pose a little bit longer. So this work that we're doing into the pelvis, to the hips, also introducing an element of rotation through the spine, helping to release through the upper body. Tuning in with your breath. And then very slowly, once again, unwinding back to center. So like us to, again, unwind the legs, come back into semi-supine. This time I'd like you to place one hand under each buttock. So it's like we're lifting the sacrum off the floor. So it's going to be a slightly more intense leg work. Okay, so we take one leg towards the vertical, the right leg, for example, and then as you exhale, you go down close to the floor, inhale back up. So again, we're toning here, exhale down, moving the leg towards a straight leg, inhale back up. So you're propping up the pelvis with the palms facing down. The pelvis is resting on the back of the hands are separate. Exhale down. Your other foot is firmly placed on the floor, soles of the feet on the floor. So acts as a supporting role, keeping the pelvis more or less level. So we can do 8 or 10 cycles. Again, strengthening around the hip area, toning. And releasing down. So the foot to the floor, opposite leg goes to the vertical on the inhale, exhale down. Inhale up, noticing any difference in terms of sensation or strength or power between the right and the left leg. Exhale down. Inhale back up. Eight or 10 cycles, and then again coming to rest. I'd like you to float now both your feet up towards the ceiling. So we'll know this is the happy baby pose. So if you can take hold of the inner feet or heels and allow your sacrum to sink back down. So again, we're working back into the pelvis, to the inner groins. Resting the back of the head on the floor. Sometimes called stirrup pose. I guess because of the position of the hands, resting the heel into the hand. like hooked over. Dropping the pelvis. So it's quite natural that it will tend to rise, the tailbone, or even the sacrum tends to lift. If we can sink back down. Once again, tuning in with the specific sensations in the pose. So we're probably going to feel this round the, as it were, the inner groins. Depending on your flexibility, you may start to come into what are called sensations of compression. So it's where you'll feel the thigh pressing against the forward rim of the pelvis. If you can imagine anatomically, like the thigh bone is coming out of the hip joint. So as you bring the thigh bone down towards you, you'll start to, there'll be a point when the thigh meets the pelvic rim, as it were, the inner face of the hip joint. So there may be some sensations there of compression, okay, whereas in the outer buttocks, more of a tensile sensation, stretch. Okay, and releasing down the legs. Bring the soles of the feet to the floor. I'd like you to roll to one side, coming back up to vertical. Bringing the feet forwards now. Oh, I've gone off camera there. So the feet come forwards into like, this is sometimes called diamond pose. You can also do it like this. Or butterfly pose. So it's very simple. You bring the feet forwards and you release forward. So it's a similar pose to what we've just done, but it's a bit gentler. So you allow yourself to release forwards. If you've got the flexibility, you may want to place your forearms underneath your shins. And again, it may be nice, should we say, use that word nice, to rest the forehead. But this might be a place where you could explore letting the head hang into space. I'll let you decide, okay? So depending on how that feels, support the head or not. Allow your body weight to sink forwards. Again, we're working into the inner legs. Very much it's a very kind of introverted pose, surrendering pose. Letting your body come forwards and down. Noticing if you're holding on in the shoulders or the neck. Face, if you can let go. Connecting with the process of the pose and noticing how it starts, how it builds up, the experience in the pose, noticing where the pose is affecting you, sensations specific to this pose, noticing how it is to be in the pose after a few breaths, and tuning into sense of our heart, mind, the emotions, chitta. So if we can encourage an attitude as well that's important in the yoga practice, the one of gentleness, kindness, forgiving even, forgiving. So being gentle with our body, with our mind, with our heart, bringing a sense of care, sensitivity, even warmth into what's happening. So it's easy to say these words, and it's easy to get into judging and criticizing and evaluating. in an unhelpful way. So see if we can be more open to just the experience as it is, gently investigating, exploring a sense of kindness, gentleness, even if the experience is not easy, not comfortable, difficult, unpleasant. Just checking again if we're releasing in the shoulders, the neck, even though we're working more towards the lower body in this pose, not forgetting about the rest of the body. Okay, and then from there, carefully, as it were, resurfacing. And we're going to take the legs. So it's a similar position, okay, but the legs go wide. So this emphasizes more the inner legs. And then we allow ourselves to rest forwards. What I notice is I don't have personally loads of flexibility in this direction. So it's really helpful having some support in front of me. And although, again, as I said, you can practice with the head floating into space, but you may enjoy supporting the head weight. So this is sometimes called dragonfly. I like to rest the hands onto the legs, onto the shins, with an emphasis of not particularly working the legs, okay? All I'm doing is having a sense of the feet pointing towards the ceiling. That's the only effort I'm making in the legs. Having the feet pointing upwards. So there's a sense of aligning a bit the legs. But you can also practice with the legs completely passive, which is interesting to explore. So I'm not trying to straighten the legs or anything like that. I'm just allowing the weight of my upper body to draw down through the lower body. So I'm working the tissues in that way using gravity. Connecting with the breath here, just slightly more open pose, connecting with the breath, feeling the breath. Feeling the breath into the belly. So just checking in again through the body. Where can I let go? Where can I release? Softening with this quality of kindness, gentleness. Okay, and again, so we could stay longer in these poses. I think in your own practice, you really need to explore the duration. Okay, so the general recommendation for the yin poses is like a minute or 2 or 3, up to 5 minutes. But when you're practicing on your own, just explore what it feels like to be in the poses longer, shorter, what kind of resistances come up or restlessnesses come up. Okay, so as it were, time is moving on. I'd like us to move on. So gently restacking the spine. We're going to move into, as it were, the second section of this sequence now. So we bring the knees in, and so this is more of a toning sequence now. So I'd like us to, you're going to need at least a cushion or a couple of bricks, and we're going to lie down onto our side. and prop up the top knee. Hopefully you can see that. I could even be a little bit higher. So you could have your knee, your top knee, the same height as your hip. So really, if you, so extend the other leg, the leg that's on the floor, along the floor. It's not essential that it's that high. That's just, it's up to you. And then we're propping ourselves up. We're going to gently on the inhale, lift the back leg. Can you see that? In the exhale, you release down. Inhale, lift. So it activates the inner thigh. Exhale down. So I think this is a kind of Pilates style move. Inhale, lifting. Projecting through the heel of the straight leg. Lifting. So we'll do like 8 or 10 repetitions here. See if you can keep the face relaxed, upper body relaxed. Exploring lifting the inner leg. So the next few poses are going to be more toning around the pelvis and into the core of the body. Inhale, lift. So this is working more the inner leg. Next time we lift, let's see if we can lift and hold for a few short breaths. That's really quite unpleasant. Whoa. So it's like inner leg area. And release. And then we'll switch sides. So I'm just going to change round so I can look towards the screen. And again, propping myself up, the forehead, sorry, on the side of the head. The straight leg along the floor, top leg supported on something, on some sort of padding. And then on an inhale, lifting the inner leg. Exhale down. 8 or 10 cycles. So as we inhale, we're straightening through the lower leg, lifting. Exhale down. So with the breath, you could also do it the other way around. So you could exhale, lift, inhale down. Okay, next time we lift, we'll hold. So we can just sustain that for a few moments. Keep breathing. Really quite intense on the inner leg. And release. Good. Now, taking the support away, I'd like us to roll onto our back. This could be a bit of a nightmare to describe online, but we're going to place the hands around the back of the head and take both legs in one direction, okay? Bringing the thighs towards your chest. Okay, then once you've turned your legs, you look in the opposite direction, and then we extend the top leg now. So you'll feel this in the outer leg. So as you inhale, extend the top leg, exhale, fold. So some of you would have done this with me on our courses. As you inhale, extend, exhale, fold. It's like a Vini yoga movement. Keeping the thighs lined, not necessarily together. The thighs are not necessarily touching. The idea is to extend the top leg so it becomes quite active on the inhale. The gaze is going to be up or to one side. Okay, and then on the next in-breath, extend the leg out and then see if you can turn the toes towards the ceiling. So there's a really powerful external rotation. You should feel that quite strongly in your outer hip buttock area, along the side of the thigh, and release. Come back into center. So I'm going to stay where I am. I'm going to take the legs to the opposite side. I'm going to look away from the legs and then extend the top leg. So it's as though I'm kicking out on the inhale. Kick out, inhaling, exhale, fall back. Keeping the thighs more or less lined up, as it were the femur stays lined, but the inner legs are not necessarily touching. Extending out on the in-breath, exhaling back. So this has quite a powerful effect around the gluteus, around the sacrum. It's useful for liberating that area, toning, strengthening, mobilizing. Okay, next time we inhale, extend the leg out and then turn the toes towards the ceiling. Really quite, I would describe that as kind of unpleasant, to be quite honest. Turning the toes towards the ceiling. So you're working into those muscles around the outer thigh, outer buttock, the buttock area, the hip rotators as they're called, drawing them closer to the sacrum. And release. Back into center, come back into semi-supine. Just briefly absorbing that, feeling that. So we work the inner legs, we've just worked the outer legs. So I'd like to now turn, rolling to one side and coming up into all fours. Okay, just check this. Great. So from here, so we're just going to do a little bit of toning. So this, we did do this with the first workshop. So I want us to bring the hips up. This is more like toning through the front of the whole of the body. So as you inhale, you come into what's called the high plank. So the gaze goes forwards, but not letting the hips drop too much. Exhale, swing back up. Again, we can do this like 5, 8, 10 repetitions. Exhale. The dog pose, inhale to what we could call high plank. Lifting back on the exhale. Inhale into high plank. Okay, next time we come into the high plank, let's stay there for a few breaths. Breathing. Checking that we're not dropping the pelvis too low. So the bad way to do this is to collapse the pelvis. So if you've got a doubt about that, you just lift the pelvis a bit higher. And release down. All fours into child's pose. So obviously we're going to feel that in the upper body as well. From there, coming into all fours. So we're now going to come into what's called like the low plank. So you can bring your palms together or the palms down. I think that'd be the two obvious options. Or you could even separate the palms a little bit. And then you tuck your toes under and you come level to the floor as much as is possible. So this is toning the front of the body. Again, perhaps we wouldn't describe this as a pleasant pose. So it's powerfully demanding the whole body, as it were, the core of the body. Breathing is going to be shorter, sharper, keeping the neck long. Again, releasing down. Moving back through to child's pose. And take a pause there. Checking in with the sensations in the body. Noticing the energy in the body, vibration, circulation. And coming again, once again, to all fours down to one of the hand positions. You could vary that. Hands could come wider now or closer together. Palms together, for example, and then tucking the toes under, long base. And lowering yourself. So you're just more or less in a straight line. Again, we don't want to collapse the pelvis down. Sense of length through the spine. Gaze forwards and down, backs of the legs engaged. Thighs working. Feeling the body. And release down. We could hold that longer, of course. Rest back into child's pose. So I'm just going to leave you just for a moment. I'm just going to walk back. Okay, so relaxing now. So everybody can hear, yeah? You can hear me? Okay. Sometimes these earbuds, they switch off. Okay, so I'd like to come round onto your back again. And so just this is like one last echo of the hip stretch. So this is again a classic hip stretch, probably softer than what we've done. So you threading the needle, sometimes it's called a half lotus in supine. So you take one of the feet up onto the thigh, thread the hand through the legs. The hand goes around the outside. Hopefully this is familiar. And rest the back of the head on the floor. Allow the weight of gravity to descend through the body. Okay, so the effect is different depending on our position. Obviously, the effect of gravity. So we've done this pose really as swan pose. So in that case, we've got the whole of our body weight down onto the groin and the hip area. Now it's softer, so it's just the legs, as it were, under their own weight, falling down towards the floor. But still, again, attentive to any sensations in the knee. If it doesn't feel okay on the knee, this is not a recommended pose. See if you can soften around the shoulders. And releasing the hands. Switch sides. Okay. And again, working quite gently. See if you can release the arms, shoulders, even though their hands are interlaced. The sense of gentle traction through the upper body, through the upper arms. Tuning in again with the breath. Feeling your breath there. And releasing with the exhale, releasing out. Coming around once again into all fours. Okay. Okay, so from all fours, I'd like you to come up into, actually, sorry, yeah. We're going to build this up in 3 stages. It's a pose based on Vasisthasana. So the first one's very easy. I'd like you to line up your top leg, so you can turn either way, in the line of your pose. And then we turn laterally and extend up and look up. So we're all in one plane, but we're balanced. We've got there's not too much weight going into the mid waist area or mid section of the body, because you've got your knee supporting you. So that should be fairly straightforward. Should be fairly easy. Reaching up, opening up. Checking that your pelvis is in line with the shoulders, the legs in line with the pelvis and the shoulders. So we're all in one plane, and then release down, switch sides. So the opposite side, lining up foot, knee, or feet and knee as much as is possible. Reaching up, so we can look up, or you can look out, or you can look down, whichever helps with your balance, whichever makes the pose more accessible. So we're working down through both sides of the body. Okay, from there coming down, hands and knees. And then lifting the pelvis now. And I want you to turn. So I'm going to give like side foot specific instructions. I want you to turn your right foot out and place the right foot down. Just like turned out. Okay, and then I want you to place the left top of the foot on top of the right foot. You see that? So we swing the top of the left foot on top of the right foot. And then we're going to see if we can swing round into a balanced position now. So you may need to lengthen your base a bit, because we're going to lower the pelvis. So it's a version of Vasisthasana. So the left foot is on top of the right foot. Breathe there. So you may feel there's more in the upper body than in the mid body. Okay, and then releasing down, back to dog pose. Now we're going to turn the left foot out, and the right foot rests, as it were, inside, or on top of, should I say, on top of the left foot. And then swing round. Breathe there. We're working through the sides of the body, so I'm wanting to focus a little bit more on what we could call core strength. And releasing. Take a pause now, just a brief pause into child's pose. And the last version of Vasisthasana is the classical one. So we come up into dog pose. We now turn the outside edge of the left foot to the floor, and you bring the inner feet together. So it's like you're standing to one side as though you're leaning out. So you bring the inner feet together. Your waist, you're trying to lift. So we're working on core strengthening here. As it were, somebody's pushed us, we've been standing upright and we're just leaning out over to the side. Do that for a few moments and then switch sides. I'll let you do that in your own time. Inner feet together. It helps to turn the toes slightly towards the hand. So you're definitely flexing the feet. Do a few breaths on each side. Aiming to line up shoulders, hips, and ankles as much as possible. And release. Back into dog pose. And from there, we're going to walk the feet towards the hands. And just for a moment, we're up on our feet. We're going to let ourselves hang towards the legs. As though, we've got gravity working through the upper body. Allow the upper body to release, the arms to release, the neck. Connecting with the breath. From there, bending the knees, lifting the chest. So we're going to go off camera for a moment there, coming up to standing. So we're just up onto our feet, just for a few moments, and just feeling your body now in the upright position. Before we're going to come down now to Shavasana, just for the last 5 minutes of the session. So I'd like to make sure you've got all the gear you need to be warm, okay? So what I like to do with Shavasana is place a bolster underneath the knees, or a roll underneath the knees, and then a little bit of support for the head. Okay. So this is going to be a fairly brief session of Shavasana, but I want us to finish here as it completes the practice, and it will be a chance to revisit these 5 aspects of mindfulness. So as you lie back, seeing if you can lengthen the spine down, open the chest area, lengthen the waist, lengthen the neck, broaden the upper back. So you will feel, you should feel quite a bit the hips and the legs, with that, particularly with that, the yin poses we did. So once we're down onto the floor, just for 5 minutes or so, we're going to tune back in with specific sensations that are arising in the body. So just noticing the areas which we've stimulated, which have become alive, which are active in your attention. So maybe you're noticing the arms as well from those last few poses. Tuning in with the sensations around the pelvis, down into the feet, a sense of letting go. The second aspect is this global awareness, so aware of the whole body, from the crown to the feet, into the hands, and aware of the space around you. So when we're aware of the body, we're aware of the, as it were, the context, the space that we're in. So aware of the room, the ambient of the room, temperature of the room, the light, sounds. Then tuning in once again with a sense of the heart-mind, chitta, the emotional tone of our experience, hopefully feeling a little bit lighter, a little bit more spacious, but not necessarily. So being in touch with whatever's arising emotionally for you at the moment. Then becoming aware of your experience as one of change, flux, constant unfolding, evolving experience. And then just for a last minute or so, coming into the breath, tuning in with your breath. So I'm just you just stay there just for a minute or so more. Feeling the in-breath and the out-breath. If we can soften into the out-breath and allow the in-breath to come in to the body, releasing the out-breath. So it's a bit of a brief shavasana. Usually I recommend like 10 minutes, 15 minutes even. But it's the time. I know people probably need to go and do things. It's 10:30 over there. So I'd just like to say thank you very much. Hopefully that was useful, the first session. And we'll revisit some of the posture work, but basically that's where we're going over the next couple of days. And as I said, I'm recording, hopefully recording. So I'm just going to, yeah, I've been recording. That's great. So what I'll do